Dr. Jerry Head, past band director at North Carolina Central University. And Dr. Head, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by the Sound Machine Booster Club, and we really appreciate your time.
No problem. Glad to do it.
Okay. Now, regarding your tenure, let's just start. How did you get in music in the first place? Kind of give us a little bit of your background.
Well, I came from a little town in named Madison, Georgia, down outside of Atlanta. Started off, my mama made me take piano lessons. I rebelled against that because she wanted me to play for the church choir, and I wasn't about to go for that one, so I backed up on that.
Okay.
Then I picked up the guitar and started playing the guitar. This is, of course, without reading music and all, but that was what I really got heavily involved in music with. In '65, it's kind of interesting you mention this because in '66, that is, the high school that I attended didn't have football, didn't have band. My principal all of a sudden decided she wanted a band program. So they hired this guy to come in, came in the spring of '66, named Robert Murphy. He's very ill now, and I'm not expecting him to last much longer, but we've talked a lot in the last couple of weeks. He came in and started teaching band. And I was never a test taker, so I thought I wanted to play clarinet. Then when he demonstrated the instruments, he messed up on the clarinet. So I said, if the clarinet is too hard for him, I know I can't mess with it. So I left that alone. I wanted to play trumpet.
Okay.
And he passed out the instruments according to how well you did on the test. And I never was much of a test taker. So when the scores came down to my name, all the trumpets were gone. So I ended up taking the trombone. And that's how I got started on the trombone, and he taught me that. And I kind of latched onto it. During that summer, I played just about every instrument there was in the band. I would take a different one home every weekend just to play around with it. But I stuck with the trombone. Liked what he did. I liked his lifestyle in terms of what he did at the school. So I decided then I wanted to be a band director. I went to Fort Valley State College at that particular time. A guy named George Adams became my my brass teacher there. Outstanding young man. I liked what he did. But he was not the band director at the time, so I started having reservations about wanting to be a band director. I said, I don't think I want to be a band director. I like to teach music. But my mother had said in her mind that she couldn't wait to see me taking my band around on trips. So I couldn't get out of being a band director, so I ended up sticking with that.
Okay.
So I graduated from that, went on to Tennessee State then, and went to graduate school at Tennessee State University. After I finished Tennessee State, the day after I did my graduate recital, the chairman of the music department at Winston-Salem State called the chairman of the music department at Tennessee State saying, we got a teacher going on leave. He's a brass teacher. Do you have anybody that you would recommend to us? He recommended me. Mm-hmm. So the next day, I'm in Winston-Salem interviewing for the job and signed the contract that day. So that's how I ended up in North Carolina, just teaching at Winston-Salem State, just doing just teaching brass classes and all. Mm-hmm. Ended up getting stuck with the band the next year, which was the second year I was supposed to be there while this teacher was on leave. Winston-Salem State played North Carolina Central. Dr. Mitchell was the band director at North Carolina Central at that time, and Mitchell made it clear to me that he was not going to stay another year. He said, I'm through with it. This is it. I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay. My term at Winston-Salem was ending. He came back and mentioned me to the department chairman here at North Carolina Central. He came over and we talked, and next thing you know, I'm at North Carolina Central. That was in 1976. So getting to be a band director started way back with me taking a little piano, then guitar, but it really started in 1966 when a guy named Robert Murphy came to Madison, Georgia to teach instrumental music, and I started with the trombone, and that was it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In fact, one of your students, Mr. Kaysen, who's a band director in his own right today, he mentioned the trombone because he was a trombonist at the time, and he was saying that he had come into your class and had some type of trombone. It was makeshift trombone, and you kind of told him, you need to go get you a trombone.
Yeah, I got to get a real horn. Yeah, it was Kaysen, Xavier Kaysen. He came to me in 1980.
Okay.
I believe it was. His father was a band teacher out in the Murfreesboro area, somewhere in that area there. Outstanding student. From the very beginning, it's an outstanding student. Good leadership qualities about him, good musician, a student who listened to you. And he reminded me of myself because when he came in, he was somewhat focused in terms of what he wanted to do and where he was going. And everything he did pretty much led him to where he is today. I think one of the low points in my teaching was during Cason's senior year. We were getting ready for his senior recital, and he was stricken with this thing, Bell's paralysis or something that kind of twisted him a little bit there. And he was unable to do a senior recital. We had to do a waiver for him to do that. And that was something I was really looking forward to because he was working on a lot of the music that I had played during my recitals. And I was really looking forward to hearing it played by somebody else. And but this thing happened, and he couldn't get that recital done. And I think that was one of the things that I had more disappointment about that. I was probably more disappointed than he was. And that was probably one of the lower points there for me, a disappointment. More so for me than probably for Kason, because I was really looking forward to him doing it. I thought he was a student who was going to do a great recital and make me look good. He was also a good student in terms of arranging. I was determined that pep band thing was something I didn't want to be bothered with. But they wanted us to do it, so Kason is the one who we kind of turned it over to. And he was able to get the students together and do the pep band. He wrote the music for them and all that, which was a good experience for him, I hope. Did very good with that. And he was just a good leader because the kids listened to him. I mean, they listen to him sometimes. They wouldn't listen to me. So he did a very good job with that. So, an outstanding student there, a very good student.
Well, he gives a lot of credit to you, even to the way how he picks his drum majors.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was a tough situation there too, because it was almost a given that when you picked a drum major back in those days, the instrumentation wasn't that strong. We didn't have that many people. And it had to be an unusual person for you to choose a trumpet or trombone player or something to be a drum major, because we needed them to play the instruments. But Kason was a trombone player, and his leadership skills were just so great until it was just hard not to do it. We just had to make that sacrifice. And of course he did. I believe he was drum major in 83 to 84, somewhere in that area there. And he just did a good job with that, so it was worth losing him as a trombone player to get that leadership quality that we needed there.
Okay, great. Okay, kind of take us back a little bit to 1976 and share with us, if you please, the ins and outs of organizing a band.
Well, when I came in 1976. Dr. Mitchell had just stepped down. The band had been through some periods of unrest, so to speak. They'd gone through one director, then another director came in. So some of these students had two people in that time frame. Yeah, some of these students had a couple of band teachers during that particular time. So it was a bit unsettling for them to have a third person to come in. And during this particular time, I walked into this place. I was 23 years old at the time. And many of the students were about the same age, or just a few years or so younger. So we came into it not necessarily knowing what to expect, but determined, well, it's a job, so I got to make it work. Dr. Mitchell was still there and was very, very helpful with that. Matter of fact, to be a past director, he was probably a model past director, because he was a person who was there to help. But he never got in the way. Sometimes I wish he had have gotten in the way more and more to step out there and say, no, do this. But he didn't. He stayed out of the way. But anytime I asked him to help me with for some advice, he readily gave it to me. So, but it was a tough situation because we had an administration at that time that talked a good game, but not a whole lot happened. It was almost a given if you went in to ask for something, you probably wasn't going to get it. One of those type situations, but we made it work anyway. 76 was a pretty good year for me. Wasn't that bad. The next couple of years were good. 79 was the toughest year. I think in 1979, and it was a purging year, which ended up being a good thing. But 79, we probably went down to about, I would say 50 instruments. I say this much, in 79, it was interesting. We had 11 brass players in the band. I think we had 6 trumpets, 2 trombones, 1 tuba, mellophone or 2 or something like that. About 11 people in the whole brass section. And but it turned out to be, it was a tough year, but it turned out to be a good year because we kind of purged a little bit. In 80, I think this was also the time that Nancy Rowland became the director of admissions. So in 1980, the recruitment process began to get a little better, and the band started growing. It got stronger, and the spirit of the student body changed tremendously at that time. The football team started winning a little bit more consistently and all that, so it all changed. which made directing the band easier. We got a different type of student in at that time, more motivated student, more school spirited student, and all of that. So that's when it really, to me, that's when it kind of started turning around in 1980. The 76 year, that first year, it was a learning experience for everybody. I was new to the place, just finding my way around on campus was a challenge. But it worked. Had some good students there who were very cooperative. Not a lot of comparing one director to another. They said, okay, this is where we are, let's make it work. And they did. They cooperated quite well.
Well, in talking with a lot of the alumni that marched with you, they still to this day hold you in very, very high esteem, and it shows their leadership, their attention to purpose, attention to detail, and so certainly we thank you for that and instilling those good things. Yeah. Now, as far as some of your milestones with the band, some of your good things that you like to remember about the band, would you care to share some of those with?
I'm sitting now trying to think of what would be highlights. We had a lot of good times. There was a lot of good things we did. Some of the trips were good. We had a thing with the kids then in terms of being on time. If we left at 1 o'clock, the bus rolled at 1. If you weren't on it, that's tough. Okay. So those were kind of memorable moments. But I think it's hard to pinpoint any. We did the Gremlin thing back in '85. That '85 was probably the best band that we had.
Okay.
That was a top year for me, I thought. We did that New York trip in '85. The kids were very, they were a little bit concerned about playing against Gremlin. And I had a lot of videotapes of Gremlin, but I wouldn't show it to them. Only a couple of the students knew what that was going to be like. So, I knew Gremlin was not going to be the type of band that they thought it was. So that was an exciting point because once we got there and performed, we found that the level of performance was equal to Gremlin, if not better, on the field. Right. There was nothing to be looked down upon for that. So that would probably be one of the shining moments there. Another interesting moment. Some of the guys, I don't know who might be at this is fair, but some of the guys might remember this in 1984 or 2. We went to Norfolk State. Had no idea what to expect. Norfolk State was a band that exemplified the kind of things we had been talking about in terms of the decorum in the stands and all this kind of stuff. So the kids were able to see that, and that was another turning point. When they were able to see another band doing the type of things that we had talked about. Emory Fields is the band director at Norfolk State, who I think is probably one of the finest band directors that ever lived. Emory is just a remarkable guy. And he had that band doing things and performing in such a way that was really a learning situation for all of us. So that was a good point right there, just to see that in action. In terms of other shining moments, can't particularly pinpoint anything directly, but those type of moments were good for us. Just to see other bands and to see the students' reactions to other bands and how they rehearsed as we prepared to perform with these other bands. The other thing that was different too is that during that time, all of the band directors, we were in CIAA at that time, all of the band directors in the CIAA, we were friends. We knew each other.
Okay.
And the students in a lot of these other bands came from some of the same schools. So we had students who came from one high school in Central, one in Norfolk, one in Hampton, and all this. So the students had a good camaraderie there too. So when we went to play these football games, it was a real social outing too because the students knew each other. The band director, we always took each other to each other's homes and fed them. The band directors and stuff. We always hung out together like that. So those kind of moments were good social events for us as well. Didn't have a lot of problems with the bands in terms of fights and all that kind of. Didn't have none of that kind of stuff because the kids liked each other. They got along with each other very well.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Can you tell us some of did you have assistants during that time, assistant band director?
The only person I had was the Moselle Long.
Okay.
And Moselle was a woodwind person. And it was a Central grad. I don't know about what year that was though. But he came along helping me in '84, '85, something like that, and stayed there all the time I was there. Even after I left, he was still there for a while. He's retired now, of course, completely. But he worked with me. But that was not. That was a faculty assignment a little bit. Long was not a. he was not a tenure track teacher at that particular time. He was an adjunct, if you want to call it that, a lecturer adjunct or something like that. So the school never really invested in a permanent teacher as an assistant director. These were kind of year-to-year appointments that they had. It worked, but it was not the kind of commitment to an assistant that the school really should have had at that particular time. But it worked. He was a good guy to have with me, very supportive and a hard worker. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, Dr. Head, we would like to thank you for your service to North Carolina Central University and being, as we like to call it, one of those building blocks of the band of today with Mr. Jordan Reed.
Okay.
He's been there 10 years.
Right, it's a long time.
It's a long time, and time has certainly flown. Would you like to express maybe some of your words of wisdom regarding the band, as well as elaborate with the direction of the band under Mr. Reed and the students today?
Marching band has taken on a completely different flavor than what it was when I was there, or when I was involved in it. The movie Drumline came along, which I think was a horrible movie for band. It was entertaining, but it really did not do bands well, I don't think. I think it sensationalized mediocrity, and it made fun of good teaching. I never liked that aspect of the band. But I think the problem is a lot of these bands have taken on that aspect, and they've gone a little bit too far in sensationalizing some of the things that are not necessarily what a music program or band is all about. I would say that the music is the most important part. Okay, the marching is incidental to the music. I would think that in terms of the whole decorum, that the students need to be more in tune with what they're doing so that the rehearsals won't have to be so long. I hear that rehearsals sometimes last 3 or 4 hours, and I don't understand that. But I do understand it too, because if you're not focused and you're wasting time, then you have no choice but to do it that way. But I would think that needs to be keyed in on and give some attention to the amount of time that is focused on that. But just making sure that everything you do is centered around the fact that the band is a musical organization. Period. Okay, you march because if you're out there on the field, that's the only way to get from point A to point B. But the actual thing is that it is a musical organization. So make sure you keep that up front in everything that you do. The numbers are good these days. I don't understand where all these kids come from, because the high school bands are not that big now. But the numbers are good, which means you're getting the people, so something must be doing right. So I just say keep that up, and making sure that everything that the directors do functions within the Department of Music, and that it's all serving as a good laboratory experience for your music majors. So they have something they have a practice experience with being in the band. And that would be my encouragement to any band director now, is that to make sure you keep the music first and make it a positive experience from a musical standpoint for all of the students.
Okay, well, Dr. Head, again, we thank you so much for taking out the time to talk with us from your very, very busy schedule. And again, thank you for your service at North Carolina Central.
No problem. Glad I could be there.